to the NeuroTrain Collaborative Podcast. I'm Erin,
I'm Katie.
Family.
and we are going to be talking about the benefits of strength training today and how our brain is affected with strength training and how we can leverage that to your advantage so that you can train even more effectively. So, some of you might have seen the post that we put out recently on how strength training actually affects reduces depressive symptoms. So I think one of the biggest, I don't know how to say this, the biggest things that people focus on with strength training is more about like aesthetic and like how you look, I feel like, in the health and fitness industry. But truthfully, when it comes to the holistic picture of your well-being, being stronger reduces neurological threats significantly, which can reduce pain and pain responses significantly. It can help you avoid injury moving forward in the future, but it also has a significant cognitive increase and well-being improvement aspect to it that I think is underrated on a regular basis. I know for myself, when I'm having a high stress period in my life, getting to the gym is like one of the best therapies I can offer myself. And just like getting myself to move heavy weights and get some of that energy out can be a huge stress reliever. And oftentimes is I leave the gym feeling better than when I got there. What about you guys?
Same. And it's been really helpful for me to use strength training as a way to combat high estrogen as well. It's a really great way to like divert those resources into building muscle. And I just feel better. I just feel better. For me, I like strength and complex movement personally. I like combining those two. There's still nothing like, pulling a nice deadlift and feeling really good about that. But um, I feel so much better as I have shifted my other job as a woodworker into lifting and maneuvering weird pieces of wood in difficult situations in tight spaces. And it's heavy and I have to sometimes hold it there for quite some time. And it's wonderful for my body. That is what works for me. So instead of doing like just powerlifting, which is where I come from, um, I feel personally a lot better with complex movement and moderate weights, I would say, but more like we'll get into this, but ACM contractions, assisted contractile mapping stuff, because I might have to hold something for a really long time right here. Um, and just adding the complexity to that and vibration, obviously, just because that's sanders and tools that spin and are sharp. There's vibration to that. Um, but that's my medicine. Like that is what makes my body feel wonderful and sleep well at night and wake well rested, ready to tackle the day.
Awesome.
It's crazy like how many layers there are to this because there's that really conscious side of it where we know we want to be strong, but there's also a real subconscious part of that where as we get older, I think that we can become afraid subconsciously. We might not even know we're limiting ourselves, but if we are not moving and building mass in our muscles, then we're also not keeping our bones dense and we're not improving our circulatory and respiratory systems. Our immune system is also going to be stronger when we are doing strong things with our muscles. And I'm like Katie, I that dynamic complex movement is really, really satisfying. And I think that that's because we're human beings and we are built to be integrated and to be dynamic. And not everybody has that as a lifestyle pattern that they've experienced, but innately, we kind of all know that's the subconscious part that we kind of know that that's the way that we could be. And that helps motivate us to continue to want to do more on the strength side. And then all the layers that come in actually neurologically and physically, we like them too.
Yeah, those are really good points. I think that, in my history before I learned about Z Health and the Ray Peat stuff that I was studying, your traditional fitness background is, biomechanic focused. You kind of everything's like in this 90-degree angle, or it used to be anyway, kind of set up, and everything was kind of like sagittal plane and like frontal plane. And I think there's been a big, I think, turn in the industry, which I'm really grateful for, where people are talking about complex dynamic movements, and the importance of being able to rotate. Like our bodies aren't just in one plane; they actually are designed to like twist and rotate and whip even for like more force and for more speed. Um, and in my experience now that I know what I know about the nervous system, some people can't carry out certain complex movements or even certain body mechanics, not because they're not listening to me, not because they're stupid, but because their brain just actually isn't making that connection. And so, one of the things that was really eye opening for me in my first R phase course was that the movement map lives in the frontal lobe, and that a lot of that like motor planning actually happens in the frontal lobe, and then it actually drops down into the basal ganglia where the architect makes the movement blueprint, and then that goes back to the frontal lobe, which is driven now to the opposite side cerebellum, and then that cerebellum is making sure that I'm moving correctly. um and to understand that there's a whole entire thing that's going on there, I never knew that before I got to Z Health. It totally changed how I train things. And even the idea that how well you feel your body also impacts how well you move your body. And that some people might be poor movers because they actually can't feel their elbow or their shoulder or their wrist or their knee very well or very accurately. And that because that sensory input is missing, the brain is putting on these brakes to limit the range of motion in order to keep you safe from tearing yourself apart. So those kinds of aha moments for me have completely changed the way that I train clients. You know, even the idea that the majority of your movement pathway is actually feeding into the part that holds the reflexive tone on the opposite side so that you're stable while you're moving. And if you have poor reflexive stability, that will directly show up in how much weight you can lift, how well you can lift it, how many reps you can do, your endurance, etc.
Pain. I mean, that's a huge component of pain. And I don't know about you guys, but like I see a lot of clients and friends and people just pushing real hard to do bilateral movement. And that, right, what Erin just explained, this idea that one side of your body has to have this reflexive tone to it to stabilize, to do the complex movement on the other side of the body. That right there is why we don't recommend bilateral movement for a lot of folks that are just starting out in their training, or if you have chronic pain or if you have chronic injuries. That is why we go to unilateral movement and then add specificity and then get into your bilateral movement, because we don't want you hurting yourselves either. This is for your own good. I myself had to go to a unilateral movement, one-sided movement, for a year before I earned the right to train bilaterally, before I earned the right to train with a barbell, because barbells are often two-sided and very bilateral movement. You want both sides to be equal. I had to earn that. And that came with a lot of training first, but that built up strength like I had never seen before. And that was without doing any bilateral training. That was insane to me. So that is a really important part to know, what Erin just shared about the PMRF. I don't even think you named the PMRF in there, but to focus on what's your brain doing in these moments? How can we, where do we jump in on that loop that goes around constantly? Where can we jump in? How can we affect that change to then make those things a lot easier on you? One of the things I've noticed, I come from a background of equestrian sports, riding horses, and we are often told to get our heels down, toes a little pointed outward, like it's a very specific position. And that's mainly to keep your seat, to keep you safe in the saddle, to keep your horse happy. Communication matters based on that. But I've seen throughout my 30 some years of riding now, coaches, scream at riders, heels down, heels down, heels down. And if your brain is not doing that for some reason, especially if it's one-sided, there's often like just something in that loop that isn't working well. And instead of trying to correct something like that by just forcing it into place, which then might result in a surgery or two, I would much rather go the route of like, hey, let's look at that loop. Let's see what we can do to fix that loop. to jump in where we need to get those heels to just naturally drop down, or to stop you from pronating or supinating on a run, or any of those things that you have felt like you've been stuck. If your hips are stuck while you're trying to squat, well, that's a whole nother thing. Like, there's so much going on here that we have tried to force for so long that we can fix pretty easily by looking at those different loops in your body, those different pathways.
And for me, that point that you made, Erin, about the sensory component of things, not being able to feel where your body is in space and time, like that was a pretty big deal, and also why moving unilaterally is important sometimes. But I think that's where active contractile mapping comes in for me, because finding that maximum contraction in an area that isn't used to finding that kind of spatial map fills in those light bulbs that need activating in the brain for better overall movement function and having that integration. And so in active contractile mapping, where you're focusing on one muscle group or a particular muscle and trying to maximize a contraction for a short period of time, to then light up those light bulbs so that it can actively contract, but then also relax better, so you get better release after the fact. I think the study that you had listed, Erin, in the newsletter was pointing to why that kind of contraction has so many different health benefits. One, filling in that sensory map, but then being able to fire better for strength. And then for me, the pain relief that came from that, because then my brain was filling in those gaps better, and it was able to know where I was in space and time, and then also be strong. Pain went down considerably, which then improves mental health, because then I felt like I wasn't going to be in pain. And then you see those numbers start to climb, where you're increasing the amount of weight that you can do with stuff, even if it's wood or with heavy animals or whatever you want to move around, that you feel satisfied. And as you add years to your life, having that kind of safety and security feeling for what your body can continue to do for you, that's pretty priceless, I think.
Totally. You brought up some really good points here. One of the things that is taught in the strength and suppleness course in Z Health, and I love how Doc brought those two kind of what would seem like opposites together. But if you're limited in your range of motion, it's usually because you're weak at those end ranges of motion. You're like, your end range of motion is your weakest point. And so learning like isometrics are probably the least threatening strength exercise you can do, because you don't have to worry about moving. You're just contracting. And contraction is ultimately like tension and contraction is where you get strong. Like that is the thing that is synonymous with strength, is being able to tense and contract well and hard. But then the opposite of that is also really important for efficient movement and for ultimately long-term health and strength, which is being able to relax. And so some people are really good at contracting, but they don't know how to relax fully. Or people don't know how to contract because they are constantly working more on relaxation. That was kind of my experience with yoga, and I'm not trying to diss on yoga at all, but with yoga, a lot of it was like getting into these most like poses and like learning how to really relax in those poses, and I think that can be really useful. But what I really appreciated about the kettlebell courses that I took was like learning to actually build tension throughout the body to increase power and strength. And strength is not just isolated to our muscles. Strength is a skill, and it's literally driven from brain function through to our muscles, right? So I think being like progressive muscle relaxation technique is also really great, especially for people that like have issues with sleeping. Learning how to squeeze really hard and then learning how to completely relax an area can actually help you move out of that always switched on contracted like place and actually get your body to start to relax and recover better. The other thing that I want to say about specifically isometrics and active contractile mapping is that when you're squeezing, when you're contracting hard, it's its own sensory skill. It actually activates a lot of C fibers, which directly impacts the insula, which is the one area of our brain that attaches meaning to on incoming input. And it also sits in between our vestibular association center. And so there's a direct correlation to being able to contract well and feel your body in contraction, and then how it shows up in both pain response and then also balance. Um, so not to, I didn't mean to go off on a rant there, but it's just there's a lot more aspects to being strong that people don't know about, because they don't know that information about the brain. And being brain, neurocentric practitioners, that's one of the aspects that we bring into our coaching classes, and why we really kind of take a lot of different approaches when we're trying to build strength with somebody long term. Anything else that you guys want to add there?
One of the things I keep coming back to as a visualization in all of this is that all of this is in an effort to clear up that GPS map in our head of everything going on, of things going on around us, of things going on in our body, of strength, of movement, feeling that I have a left knee, knowing it's there. I've had a couple ankle surgeries. I've had numbness in my ankle. Cleaning up that numbness. We're told that like it's going to be numb forever. It's not. Many of you may know I almost cut off my index finger a year and a half ago. There's still just a touch of numbness in there, but it's still something I work on. I work on sharp dull. I work on hot cold. I work on differentiation. All of that is in an effort to clear up these maps in our brain that make us feel safer, more comfortable. They help us move better. They help us feel better. And that's really what we want. We want those nice, sharp, clear GPS maps, as opposed to the ones from, let's say, 15, 20 years ago, where you heard about people driving into lakes because their map wasn't good enough, right? That's essentially what's happening with your body in a very dumbed down version. You're driving into a lake because your GPS is telling you that's a road. Well, let's clean up those maps. Let's clean up those maps.
And it doesn't take really any equipment. I think everybody should know they don't have to go to the gym. They don't have to have anything special. One of my favorite things is just a set of resistance bands if you don't have kettlebells, but we can also do body weight training and just use our own weight as our strength training, and just adding a little bit at a time to loading your upper body or your lower squats or whatever with your own body weight is going to be a big deal. And a little bit every single day makes changes really fast.
For sure. And I would say even the opposite of that is true as well. I have some clients that body weight exercise may not be the right place to start because it's so complex, having to balance or whatever is going on. And so in some cases, the old school machines, I know there's like a lot of information out there about what people think about machines. I've had great success with some clients that have so much going on that being able to sit on a seat and like strap their legs in and all they have to do is this might be the place they need to start, to strengthen their quads or their isolate a muscle group, because it's too threatening to have to try to figure out everything with a full body aspect. And this is why, we're all unique, and I think that you can't do the same workout for every person. And that, so having a coach that can understand that can support you where you're at is just absolutely crucial into helping you get better for your goals. One more aspect of well-being that I want to bring into this, first of all, the brain is meant for movement. Like that's why we have a brain, is so that we can move well through the world and adapt and interact. And a lot of times depression is kind of synonymous with pain or anxiety because it is a protective output that's being created by things being either not activated enough or imbalances or however you want to kind of look at that. But depression is an output. And so part of why I think strength training is so powerful is partially because of the insula aspect and the C fiber aspect that we talked about. But also because it's a multi-brain activity, and and if you're doing novel stuff, if you're loading with different loads and you're doing different things, it's going to be lighting up a lot of the different areas here, which can help with getting your emotional well-being back online. And the second aspect for that, I know for myself, is that body dysmorphia. In my experience, the more strength training I do, the more grounded I feel in my body.
Yeah.
And the more
Same.
confidence I have, even in my stance. I physically feel different in my posture because I can actually feel my body better. And so this can be another really great aspect for anybody who struggles with any kind of body dysmorphia. Strength training can be a really great way to kind of reduce some of that disconnect and actually increase a sense of being safe in your body, being comfortable of knowing where your body is, and feeling confident in your body. So just a little tidbit there.
A
Love
big
it.
one, actually.
Anything else you guys want to add on this topic?
No, I'm good. Kelly?
No, now I need some ice cream. Go be strong.
That's right. So if you didn't know this, we obviously teach, we have our coaching program, which has a small group class schedule. We like to do different topics. After this podcast, we're probably going to focus on strength and frontal lobe stuff in our classes. So we'll be stacking in vision drills intermixed with different styles of strength training and odd angle strength training and training your body in different positions and stuff. So if you have any questions or you're interested in maybe checking that out, DM us, leave us a message, leave us a comment, and we'll get in touch with you and talk to you more about how we can help.
Awesome.
We'll see you next.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us.